new decisions, indicating that he was losing his desire to fight to live. Srila Prabhupada indirectly admitted it was so. Therefore he said, I do not wish to leave Vrindavan. If by Krishna's desire I survive, then we shall see later on. Otherwise, even though his secretary did not read him letters or bring him news, Prabhupada went on thinking. What about the Radha Damodar temple, he asked. He had been renting his rooms there for years, and the temple proprietors had often challenged his rights. This was just another of his multifarious worries in maintaining his preaching around the world. Prabhupada advised that his disciples always live in the Radha Damodar rooms. That would prevent the landlord from trying to use them for something else. Even while lying quietly, resting, Prabhupada would turn over such problems in his mind. Tamal Krishna wanted to double check to see that Prabhupada actually wanted all the GBC men from all over the world to come. It would be costly and demanding, so he wanted to be sure that Prabhupada really wanted it. When Srila Prabhupada assured him that he did, Tamal Krishna, who saw his service as responding to whatever Srila Prabhupada desired, also spoke in favor of the idea. Because they love you, said Tamal Krishna, I am sure they will all want to come and be with you. Your love for me, said Srila Prabhupada, will be shown by how much you cooperate to keep this institution together after I am gone. This is that famous instruction we often hear quoted. And certainly it is up to us in order to follow it. So we can read it one more time. Your love for me, said Srila Prabhupada, will be shown by how much you cooperate to keep this institution together after I am gone. The room was fully decorated with rose and jasmine garlands. The kirtan party was singing sweetly and softly. Srila Prabhupada would go for hours without speaking, and when he did speak, he was usually brief. Yet he covered the same range of topics as always, and in the same pure Krishna consciousness. Recalling the contractors cheating in Bombay, he said, it is not only a sin to cheat, but it is sinful to allow yourself to be cheated. With so much effort and difficulty, both from my part and my disciples, the money has been collected, and now it becomes spoiled. I cannot allow this. Srila Prabhupada would usually make comments such as this while lying in bed. As soon as he would speak, some of the devotees attending him would come close to catch his words, and sometimes the kirtan would stop. The parts of Prabhupada's daily schedule that remained the same as before were his rising in the middle of the night to translate Srimad Bhagavatam, his morning massage and bathing, and his hearing news through his secretary. He had all but stopped his morning car ride, as well as his darshan of the deities. Eating was almost nil. He asked to be moved from his bed downstairs to the one upstairs, and sometimes he would sit at his desk. Tamal Krishna read Prabhupada a letter from Giriraj, more like a loving prayer than the letter. Giriraj had quoted a verse by Prahlad Maharaj from Srimad Bhagavatam. My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of my association with material desires one after another, I was gradually falling into a blind well full of snakes, following the general populace. But your servant Narada Muni kindly accepted me as his disciple and instructed me how to achieve this transcendental position. Therefore, my first duty is to serve him. How could I leave his service? Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. What's the verse today? Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 14, Text 35. Chapter titled, Pregnancy of Deity in the Evening. Namo Rudraya Mahate. Please repeat. Devayo Graya Midhuse. Shivaya Nyashta Dandaya. Jutta Dandaya Manyave. Namo Rudraya Mahate. Devayo Graya Midhuse. Shivaya Nyashta Dandaya. Jutta Dandaya Manyave. Please repeat. Namate Devayograya Midhuse Shivanyasta Dandaya Jitta Dandaya Manyave Namo Rudraya Mahate Devayograya Midhuse Shivaya Nyashta Nandaya Jitta Dandaya Manyave Namo Rudraya Mahate Devayograya Midhuse Shivaya Nyashta Dandaya Jitta Dandaya Manyave Namo Rudraya Mahate Devayograya Midhuse Shivaya Nyashta Dandaya Jitta Dandaya Manyave Namo Rudraya Mahate Devayograya Midhuse Shivaya Nyashta Dandaya Jitta Dandaya Manyave. Ladies, Namo Rudraya Mahate Devayograya Midhuse Shivaya Nyashta Dandaya Jitta Dandaya Manyave. Anyone else? Nama. All obeisances unto Rudraya, unto the angry Lord Shiva. Mahate, unto the great. Devaya, unto the demigod. Ugraya, unto the ferocious. Midhuse, unto the fulfiller of all material desires. Shivaya, unto the all-auspicious. Nyasta Dandaya, unto the forgiving. Jita Dandaya, unto the immediate chastiser. Manyave, unto the angry. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Let me offer my obeisances unto the angry Lord Shiva, who is simultaneously the very ferocious great demigod and the fulfiller of all material desires. He is all auspicious and forgiving, but his anger can immediately move him to chastise. Please repeat. Let me offer my obeisances unto the angry Lord Shiva, who is simultaneously the very ferocious great demigod and the fulfiller of all material desires. He is all auspicious and forgiving, but his anger can immediately move him to chastise. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Diti prayed for the mercy of Lord Shiva very cleverly. She prayed, "The Lord can cause me to cry, but if He likes, He can also stop my crying, because He is Ashutosha. He is so great that if He likes, He can immediately destroy my pregnancy. But by His mercy, He can also fulfill my desire that my pregnancy not be spoiled. Because He is all auspicious, it is not difficult for Him to excuse me from being punished, although He is now ready to punish me because I have moved His great anger. He appears like a man, but He is the Lord of all men." Om Jnana Tamandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshorn Mulatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankaite Gurim Yat Kipatamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dirataranam. So we have a very descriptive verse regarding the angry Lord Shiva. Sometimes in the material world we see examples of anger, so-called rage, especially in this age of the Iron Age of Kali Yuga. We have the main example is road rage. We don't see many other. Of course, there's also fast food rage and all types of rage. People who do ridiculous things. One man was recently killed because there was some dispute over an order at a fast food restaurant. This is the definition of the age of Kali, quarrel and hypocrisy over anything, any small detail. And we see it manifested in the most ludicrous examples. But who is learning from these examples? The devotees see these things very clearly. And so they should obviously demonstrate the ability to tolerate such small annoyances. Just like we read that famous quote in the Lilamrita that we've heard so often repeated, that if you love me, then you must cooperate after I leave. So this is, we hear it sometimes under circumstances that don't really deserve it. But in the overall picture, on the large scale view, this is the prime directive of the GBC. Prabhupada wasn't addressing the general mass of devotees in this regard, but he was very clearly addressing the leaders of the society, or those who would be the leaders, because in 1977, some of the leaders of today were not very old. The movement has progressed chronologically. So it's up to us to make sure that the movement has matured in other ways as well, by presenting the philosophy in such a way that those who are inspired to take up this path of Krishna consciousness also take up the essence of Srila Prabhupada's instructions, that this is a worldwide, global mission meant to benefit the fallen conditioned souls of Kali Yuga for the next 9,500 years. This is the duration of the golden age of Kali Yuga, which was initiated by the golden avatar, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, 500 years ago. So 500 years have already passed. And the Senapati Bhakta Srila Prabhupada, Commander-in-Chief, who came specifically for this purpose, has obviously done something that many people can only imagine. You know, for them it's not even a reality. You know, there are There are some interesting quotes that are sometimes associated with great souls about how such movements progress. And the quote is often attributed to Mahatma Gandhi, but that's in dispute. But basically, it says that in the beginning, people will laugh at you. They will ridicule you, right? And then they will ignore you. And then they will fight you. And then you will win. So these are the 4 stages. So we've already been through the ridicule stage. Anyone who joined many years ago knows how we were greeted on the street. So this was, we didn't mind. This is all part of growing up in Krishna consciousness as young men and women. We accepted that we would be, in one sense, a source of amusement for the general population. There were many cartoons in very famous publications like the New Yorker magazine that would focus on some of our, to put them mildly, foibles. What is a foible? You'll have to look it up. That's your word for the day, foible, F-O-I-B-L-E. So, as young brahmacharis and brahmacharinis, not the brahmacharinis so much. The ladies were always very careful how they dressed. The men, not so much. We used to dress from something called a merge. Very interesting. We had a common laundry system. Nobody washed their own laundry. It was all collected, and the devotees who were assigned to do the laundry would do the laundry, fold everything, and put it on shelves. But many people, devotees in brahmachari, we didn't have our own dhotis. We just used whatever dhoti was on the shelf, unless you were a senior man. And so sometimes these dhotis were not very attractive. They were made from cloth that was not meant to be used for dhoti. We would just buy it in bulk, polyester. It wouldn't fold properly. It would kind of balloon out. And we were doing kirtan in these polyester dhotis for hours and hours at a time. Didn't matter winter, summer, like that. And we didn't have kurtas for the most part in those days. Just used to wear a top over a t-shirt, or in the summertime, a top that the sannyasis wear, because we didn't know that we weren't supposed to wear tops like that. That's how we saw the pictures in the books. So we would dress like that. And footwear. Footwear was just, everybody had different types of footwear. It was amusing. I mean, to others. To us, we didn't really notice it so much. We were on Sankirtan chanting for the pleasure of Lord Chaitanya. And socks. This was the big thing for the materialists. Nobody ever had matching socks, because that's what the merge meant. There was nothing, no such thing. You grabbed some socks. And the cartoons used to show us, depict us just like that, with sikhas flying in the wind, because nobody knew how to tie a sikha knot in those days, just, with these billowing dhotis. That's another word, billowing. Okay? And different colored socks. And whatever, shoes that didn't fit or that were ragged. But we were performing Lord Chaitanya's mission, and we really didn't understand how that aspect, and it was many years actually. But the sincerity of the devotees overcame all these obstacles. So this is the point. That even though there was a great amount of ridicule at that time, Prabhupada's books were taken very seriously. And there was a huge influx of devotees during that time period. So it's not how we looked, but the enthusiasm by which we performed our service, and the dedication to the mission, distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, and of course prasadam. We used to distribute prasadam on the street, the famous New York Lugloos, which will have to somehow or other become expert enough to, again, perform that miracle of Lugloos on the New York streets. So these things, like I said, overcame all of our shortcomings. Prabhupada's books, the Lugloos, the enthusiasm. There was no substitute for it. It doesn't matter. I mean, we see so many movements, and everybody, they dress so nicely and, sharp, and there's nothing out of order. But you see the success of this movement where it's based on the spiritual potency. It has nothing to do with the material appearance. Nothing to do with it. How many people became devotees? I don't remember what the devotee who distributed Luglu or Reservoir of Pleasure, Bhattacharya, how he looked, whether the dhoti was properly folded or not, or whether his sikha was tied or not. But I remember the interaction, the gentle persuasion, the sincere desire to want to give me, Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. This is all very obvious. So that's what the devotees, that's what the persons who are genuine spiritual seekers, even if they don't know it at the time yet, it will affect them. Your sincerity, your enthusiasm, not fanaticism. We're not there trying to, by hook or crook, push a book into a person's hand. No. We want them to see how we are genuinely concerned about their spiritual welfare. And they can tell, devotees, gentle devotees. You hear this bright-faced, gentle, sincere, enthusiastic. This is the important qualities. And it's described there in Nectar of Instruction. Utsaha nishtayat darayat tat tat karma pravartanat. Enthusiasm, conviction, patience, faith. These ingredients are the success of this movement. It is not anything else. It is not, well, like I said, how well we put on our dhotis or how fancy we tie our sikha or any of those things. It's only by sincerity. And Prabhupada has repeated this often. And that the only ingredient for success in Krishna consciousness is sincerity. And so we have to take these words seriously. It's not that, and everything else will come from that. Everything else is wanted. Yes, the devotees should be learned. They should read the books. They should understand. They should be able to present the philosophy comprehensively. These are all practical considerations. But ultimately, it is your sincerity that will distribute the book, not some material expertise, not being a salesman, not, having read, what's that book, Gopal? Zig Ziglar? Is that the guy's name, right? Zig Ziglar? Famous salesman. Everybody who's ever been into sales has come across that book, has read it, or listened to a seminar or a podcast. But the devotees were so expert that in the O'Hare airport, people used to approach them all the time and offer them jobs as salesmen. They would watch them, how they could distribute these books. And there was some finesse involved, certainly. You learn some techniques. And so even though the airport authorities were inimical, the airport workers were inimical, so many people in that airport were against us, sometimes violently against us. Still, the devotees would go every day to distribute books because it was such a fertile preaching ground. They were never intimidated to stop distributing books. And as a result, we see that, even people who were inimical recognized that the devotees had some special qualities. But again, it only comes about through sincerity. This will be what impels you to rise, just like that verse, Tadarajas bhavo kama lobha deyaschaye. Cheta ete anavidam stitam sattvam prasidate. That this, Prabhupada said that, you can judge whether you're making advance or not by how much your level of with association with the particular modes of nature are. So if your association is primarily with the mode of goodness, it can be seen, not just from you, from your own perspective, but from others' perspectives as well. That this person is making spiritual advancement. But if he's still associating with the modes of nature intimately, with passion or ignorance, then it's obvious, maybe not to himself, but to others, that this person's progress is somehow or other stifled. And that devotees will always want to help another devotee to come out of that situation. They don't want to see them under those circumstances. Devotees are compassionate by nature, by practice. This is, and so there's nothing worse than to see someone who's aspiring for spiritual life get caught up in some situation that is brought about by excessive association with a particular mode or a mixed mode, passion and ignorance. They want them to be free from these things. And so and in other places, if that person is stuck in that situation and he doesn't come to at least the material mode of goodness, he cannot progress. It says knowledge only takes place on the platform of the mode of goodness. And from that platform of goodness, one achieves Shuddha Sattva, this pure mode of goodness. But there's a significant gap there. One has to be in the mode of goodness for some time, associating, which is why we follow those 4 regulative principles that separate us from most other spiritual movements. No meat eating, no intoxication, no sex outside of marriage, and no gambling. This is what separates. Others cannot. It's just inconceivable that young men and women could follow those principles. Inconceivable. But that is what helps you to quickly rise, which is why you see this movement has such immediate effect. That you can take a person who is addicted to some nonsense in the material world and give him prasadam, give him the Maha Mantra, and immediately see a transformation. Immediately see it. This is the potency of this movement. This is what, and this is, at least we can, from that external perspective, that increases our faith as well. It reinforces our conviction. We see that this is not just, what do the materialists say, a one-off. It's not that just one person became a devotee by Srila Prabhupada's personal influence. Of course, we can understand that when Prabhupada was present at that time, at 26 Second Avenue or on the Bowery, or even up at Dr. Mishra's, those persons who had direct association with Srila Prabhupada, how fortunate were they? But because there was hesitation on their part to take to the process sincerely, to follow the regulative principles, to chant 16 rounds, they were not getting necessarily the same benefit from his association. Many people met Srila Prabhupada. But their ability to perceive him, his position, his transcendental position, and to take advantage of that was limited. But every day, the devotees in the temples have the opportunity to experience the same association. Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chittite Kuriya Aikya. Prabhu, Hare Krishna, you should sit down for the class. You can come up after the class. Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chittite Kuriya. Well, how? Because the words emanating from the mouth of the spiritual master, that is what is purifying our consciousness. That is what is purifying our consciousness. And it is the same. As it was then, it is now. There's no difference. And if you see a difference, then there's some misunderstanding. Otherwise, how this movement is continuing, how are we still able to experience that exchange on that transcendental loving service? Serving the spiritual master is not ordinary. It is not a material exchange between a lover, a boyfriend, and a girlfriend. That doesn't even come in to play in this regard. One gradually develops this attraction for the spiritual master, the external representative, the external manifestation of the Supersoul. This is what prepares the living entity to rise into the eternal pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So how can this relationship be material if the result is the highest transcendental realization? But one has to understand that from a philosophical perspective first, and then from a practical perspective of service, and then that realization of the quality of that relationship will manifest. So otherwise, we every day we chant these prayers, Chintamani Prakara Sadmasu Kalpa Vriksha, that we know that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But our eyes are not tinged with the salve of love yet. And how will they ever be tinged if we do not overcome these material stigmatisms, what is covering our eyes? And that is uncovered. Om Jnana Tamrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Anmulatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Because only the spiritual master can open our eyes. So we should never think of the spiritual master in some material perspective. This is why there's that famous saying that one should not become too close either to the spiritual master or the deity. Familiarity breeds contempt. Familiarity breeds contempt. That's why Srila Prabhupada used to rotate servants frequently. Because the tendency is there to see the spiritual master as a material personality. That. Matter of fact, there was another word of caution from another great spiritual master, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, whose biography is available on the internet, but it was written as a personal explanation to his son, Lalit Prasad, who wanted to know about his father's life, his journey from an educated, young man up to who we understand the Thakur to actually be. That pure devotee who basically brought Lord Chaitanya to the West, through his preaching. And so the word of caution to his son, this is to his son, that this is for your eyes only. Because if you read the biography, it appears that the Thakur, in his early life, in his middle, was just an ordinary person. And so people think, oh, he was just another, nothing transcendental about this. So this is the danger. Familiarity breeds contempt. You cannot appreciate the life of a pure devotee with materially contaminated consciousness. But once your consciousness is pure, then you can see everything in the light of that transcendental vision. So we should be very cautious, very patient. We shouldn't want to jump over the head of the spiritual master and think, well, and Prabhupada cautioned us in that as well, right here from this Vyasa-san in 1976. Because at that time people were thinking, okay, I'm taking instruction from Srila Prabhupada, he's in the Parampara, why don't I just read Bhaktivinoda Thakur's books? Or the books of the Goswamis? Or like this. But the point is that and there's an etiquette involved as well, that one should not jump over the head of the spiritual master. And anyone who's there and heard that instruction solidifies to the point where it's very difficult to want to go outside the realm of Srila Prabhupada's instructions in this regard. Because what did he say? He said, everything is in my books. Everything. But still, somehow or other, we want to be, somehow or other, entertain our whatever. Philosophical aspirations, egotistical aspirations, the thought that, no, I can understand others' books as well. There's many such things like that. And that's fine. But if one does not demonstrate that it is understood by action, what is the conclusion of reading Srila Prabhupada's books? But is to act on his behalf. Your love for me will be shown by how you cooperate after I'm. So what is that cooperation? By pushing on this mission. If what you do or what you read or what you say isn't doing that, then obviously whatever else you've done is not helping. Vyavasayamika buddhir ekeha kurunandana. The definition there, the opposite definition is that those who are not on that path, their intelligence is many-branched. So what does that mean, intelligence is many-branched? Better to be fixed on one thing than to try to divert yourself to other, understandings, which perhaps you will misunderstand. And through that misunderstanding, you may end up leaving and thinking, oh, well, like the famous example of one of Prabhupada's main Sanskrit editors, very intellectual young man, very learned in Sanskrit, in grammar. He used to, wherever Prabhupada would go, he would travel with him because, Prabhupada's translating his books. Wherever he was, he had to have a Sanskrit editor with him. Either this person or Pradyumna Prabhu were always there. And at a certain point, this person said that I'm not getting whatever, the spiritual realization. Somehow or other, he was thinking that Prabhupada's books were not enough. Prabhupada's teachings were not enough. Prabhupada's explanations were not enough, his purports. It's difficult to conceive, but this person actually asked Srila Prabhupada that to take his blessings to find another spiritual master. So this was due to his association with, other literature. It may be literature in our line, but it's not literature that he actually understood on one level. Maybe in his limited intellectual capacity, he could understand. It's very attractive. When you read Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's, works and explanations and purports, very advanced. And in many ways, very attractive. One feels that, I like this. I'd like to be able to speak like this. I'd like to be able to present the philosophy like this. Yeah. It's a very limited audience, though. How many people could understand Srila Bhaktisiddhanta? Sorry, if you look at his morphology and ontology of the Vedas, you start to read these small books, it's amazing. He was not an ordinary soul as well. But we're not necessarily prepared to be on that platform. If we could chant 1 billion names of the Lord and prepare ourselves, because that's what he did, chanted 1 billion names, and then took sannyas. And then maybe we can enter into that level and appreciate where the Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, how he could preach like that, and for what purpose. But from our perspective, Srila Prabhupada is our all in all, in every respect. And unless one is focused like that, then his intelligence will be many-branched. He will not be thinking how to push on this mission. He'll be having so many alternate ideas, like this former Sanskrit editor asking for Prabhupada's blessings to find another spiritual master. It seems incomprehensible, but yet there it was. And since him, many have gone that way. With so many different excuses. Oh, there's no harm in hearing others. There's no harm in doing this. No, actually there is harm. If you're sincere, it's just like, they have these so-called, what do they call them? Open relationships. And we don't want to go into what that means in detail. But it means that this so-called relationship that I have with you, it's not exclusive. I can go with someone else, you can go with someone else, but we'll come back and like that. But this is all, it's a bogus philosophy. On the material level and on the spiritual level. Right? So we have exclusive relationships. We are firmly attached. Sometimes devotees say, well, I left my heart in Vrindavan and I found my heart in Mayapur and things like that. This is transcendental. This is not. One t-shirt says, I lost my shoes in Vrindavan. Right. That's also transcendental. Krishna's name is Hari, right? One who takes away. So if you're very much attached to your shoes, he's going to take them. Right? Devotees come with these very expensive shoes, and there's, of course, what do you think? The poor people, they see that it's like leaving a $100 bill on the floor. They take those shoes and boom, they go into the market, sold. So, but as far as do you understand that analogy about open relationships? Even in the material world, it's frowned upon by normal people. But those who are engaged in it, they think, oh, this is great. The comparison in the Vedas is the honeybee going from flower to flower, thinking I'm getting nectar here and there, but it's not necessarily a good analogy. It's not a positive analogy. It's not used in that sense. We should be firmly fixed in our relationship, with the spiritual master and with Krishna. Prabhupada, he would always remember his relationship with the deities at Radha Damodar temple. And wherever he was, he would bring Vrindavan with him. And so that's why in these temples there is so much potency. Even for us as neophytes, where mistakes are commonly seen, and people will sometimes say, oh, this is not right, and this is not right, and this is not right. All those things are overlooked as long as we're following the mission sincerely. They will be corrected automatically. As one's consciousness is elevated, he won't neglect anything. If there's something unclean, no one will tell him. He will spontaneously just find a way to correct the situation. Because his consciousness will be, how can you say, will open his eyes. And he will see with that, the same way he sees the deity, he will see every aspect of the temple with love and devotion. Because technically they're not different, although for us as neophytes, we see a difference. But that word is tadiyanam. Tadiyanam means nama chintamani Krishna chaitanya rasa vigraha. Everything, Krishna's name, form, pastimes, and paraphernalia are all the same. They all have the same potency. Binat vam nama namino. Purna Shakti. Everything is there, the same potency. If you clean the floor the same way you would dress the deity, there's no difference in the result. There's no difference. It's the same. If you wash the pot with that same focus to do the best you can possibly do, as opposed to someone who goes in and dresses the deity superficially, the pot washer is making more advancement than the pujari. And we've seen it, many times. But the bottom line is that one has to, as far as the purport here and the text in the verse, this anger of Lord Shiva, what we're describing, and we should take this internally whenever we contemplate something outside the mission of Srila Prabhupada. Because he is our Lord and Master in this regard. And he is easily pleased. But at the same time, he would display anger at certain, how can you say, missteps. But that was for our benefit. That was for our benefit, so that we could learn. And he told us that. Otherwise, how can you learn? Gentle, loving Father in every respect. So we're very fortunate to have these examples materially and spiritually. Not to take seriously sometimes the chastisement of a superior, thinking that this is an indication of whatever. He doesn't like me, she doesn't like me, which then becomes an excuse not to become serious in spiritual life or to go away. Rather, one should think, how can I execute my service in such a way that automatically it's understood that I am exerting maximum sincerity and effort. No one has to say it, and that's a fact. If you go in and see that the pot is shining, nobody has to say, oh, well, this. Everyone can recognize that the job was done with a sincere effort. If everything appears clean and neat, then you see, yes, the devotees are very lovingly engaged in cleansing the temple. Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana. Sringara Tan Mandira Marjanato. It's not. In the same verse, in the same shloka, as worshiping the deity, is cleaning the temple. It's the same. And this is not just the temple commander's class or the temple president's class. This is just a practical realization that you'll see after so many years, and you'll be able to expand on this realization in every aspect of one's service, how to make it a success by appreciating that single ingredient of sincerity, and how it manifests in such a way to bring about the success. Or just like we see, what's that verse? Anyway, the nectar for which we are always anxious. It's not what you're thinking. It's not the rubbery from Mangal Artik or the sweet rice from the Sunday feast, or those things are there. But the nectar for which you're always anxious is Krishna's satisfaction, which brings about this internal pleasure that cannot be achieved through any material means. That satisfaction, that is the nectar for which you're always anxious. And people in the material world will say that sometimes, the satisfaction of a job well done. It's a correlation. There are many things in the material world that have some benefit. That's the analogy that can be extrapolated. So the fact that that exists in that way means that the counterpart has a similar spiritual effect. You'll experience that transcendental satisfaction. The knowledge that and it's not, we don't want to say that, yes, I know that Krishna is pleased with me. No, the devotee doesn't think like that. But he acts in such a way, right? Prabhupada said that. Don't try to see Krishna, but act in such a way that Krishna sees you. So that, you will get that sense. You will get that sense. The satisfaction of knowing I have done the best that I can do. With all sincerity, with all humility at my command. Right? That's all. There's nothing more. No words. We say we keep going back to Diti and Kashyapa, and it's just so much lip service, trading back and forth. How did Prabhupada use that term, lip service? I think he actually invented it. He said in Mayapur one time, lip sympathy. And no one had ever heard of that term before. No one had ever heard that term. It was like, what does that mean? And then it entered into popular vocabulary as lip service. But Prabhupada was using that term, lip sympathy. Very interesting. So that's the essence of our spiritual endeavor, is to, first of all, please the spiritual master. Because if you can do that, then you will have all success in everything else. And Narada Muni, we saw that in the Lilamrita there. That let me become a servant Otherwise, how could I leave? That was that verse that Giriraj Maharaj was quoting. That is like a prayer, yes. Any questions or comments or concerns? Dr. Jimmy? No? Are you going to check on that? Well, yes, Bhakta Aiden.
Hi, Krishna.
All right, Bo.
You mentioned lip service. Sometimes, as a neophyte devotee like myself, I get a little too sentimental, or I say things as an external flaunt of humility. So, how can we actually internalize that? I mean, to what extent can that actually help me become more humble and more in a servant attitude internally? And to what state should I realize that I'm doing too much external lip service?
Well, I mean, we see Trinadapi Sunichena, so to offer all respects to others, and not expect any respect in return. And that's the surefire way. You know, if one can appreciate, you know, his God brothers and God sisters in their sincere attempts to serve the spiritual master, then automatically he will overcome all material impediments in his own character. You know, Krishna sees it is not this cleansing that takes place within the heart, the Chaita Darpana Marjanam, the dust, is rapidly cleaned when one develops this humility, which is born out of, you can say, sincerity. If one is not sincere, he will not, you know, it all goes back to that same, if you want to show your love, you will cooperate. How can you cooperate if you don't like that person? Or you don't respect that person? You don't appreciate that person? You know, it's not possible. You can't. So every morning, what do we say? As we offer our respectful obeisance to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who can fulfill the desires of everyone. So what are those desires? You know, they're going to come after Mangalarti and give you a cup of sweet rice or burfi? Or what is that? How are they fulfilling? Fulfilling desires to assist one another in achieving the transcendental goal of love of God. This tushanti cha ramanti cha. This exchange increases the taste. It's only, you're not going to go home and talk to your mother about the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of God. There's not going to be any exchange, you know, there, tushanti cha ramanti cha. It doesn't work like that. You know, even when we're describing this on the street to the conditioned souls, we don't tell them about 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam and the Ras Leela dance, you know. But amongst the devotees, we can relish this. This taste is there when one is this tadara justamo bhava, when he is elevated up to that level. He's free from the excess contamination of passion and ignorance. We're not completely free. But to the extent that we are free, we will appreciate that, those discussions. So that again is you know, an indication that when one can relish that taste and maintain that level, then he will make rapid spiritual advancement. But if he's going back and forth, this, you know, this is the common thing that, you know, the devotees are with, you know, in the association of devotees are really good like that. But then as soon as we go wherever, you know, we pick up the phone, get on Facebook, get on Instagram, get on this, get on that, and, you know, it's like taking one step forward and two steps back. You have to maintain the momentum of spiritual, you know, advancement. You can't just constantly go in and out of the purifying environment. It'll just take that much longer. I mean, you have to, this is another symptom of sincerity. that one does not constantly, shift back and forth, from one aspect, from trying to be a great devotee to something else. And you have to be steady. You have to be steady. This is the other ingredient. I mean, steadiness comes from sincerity. And it's not that you'll get sincerity automatically just by mechanical following of the process. There was there was that story about one person who came. Matter of fact, it happened when we were on Henry Street. This reporter joined the temple because they wanted to do an expose. And the devotees could immediately understand that this person was not really someone who was sincerely trying to become a devotee. It was obvious because they couldn't, they couldn't really, adopt the same sentiments as any other neophyte who was following the same path. You see this, you see it very clearly. A stranger in our midst. Very obvious. But then they said, yeah, well, actually I'm a reporter and I'm just trying to learn more about the inner workings of the Krishna consciousness, of the devotees. Yeah, we were an interesting, story. Another cult to be exposed. Because that was the common viewpoint in those days. It's the common viewpoint still in many respects. People misunderstand the Krishna conscious movement. Mr. Gopal Champu.
So I was just thinking about the point you were saying, how if people are thinking now that the mercy is not available, then they haven't understood. And I was just thinking about the principle of parampara, where as actually the further removed you are from Krishna, then actually more mercy is coming. Like we hear the Vedas have been handed down, and like a mango handed down.
That's the analogy, right?
So
a mango handed down from a high place on the tree.
So my question is, to the grand disciples, what's maybe if you can tell us or bestow upon us, what is going to be the responsibility of the grand disciples and to carry on the movement, from your point of view, from your understanding?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure that we see that, that the Vaisheshika Prabhu's view in this regard, he makes it very clear, our family business. So what does it mean, our family business? It's not that I'm just thinking my father, my grandfather. This is a multi-generational endeavor. And so that is what the parampara is. This is our family. This is our spiritual family. I don't identify with my material genealogy. I don't think back, well, my great-grandfather was from this place or that place and he did this or that. No. I identify with my spiritual grandfather and great-grandfather and all of my forefathers in such a great, amazing heritage that anyone can be proud of. There's nothing to be concerned about. And it's fully manifested in each disciple, grand disciple. One has to see. There will be exceptions. The relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master is something that has to be very carefully entered into, just like a marriage. It's not a sentiment. It's not that because this person is closest to me or this person is more attractive to. No, it has to do with hearing. Everything is hearing. This person inspires me to be the best that I can be. Because Srila Prabhupada inspired him to be the best that he could be. which is why he's in that position. Because he has demonstrated the capacity to cooperate and show his love for Srila Prabhupada. That's what qualifies him or her. So we're very fortunate, to be able to see these things. Historically speaking, we're in the middle of it. It's difficult to step outside the box and have an external viewpoint. But this is something very special. We're just still at the very beginning, but even looking back at the history of Srila Prabhupada's coming to America and knowing Srila Prabhupada's history from the very beginning, a lifetime in preparation, we have a taste of the significance of this mission and movement. And that should be the analogy of the cooked rice, that you take the grain from the center of the pot and you can understand that the entire pot is properly prepared. So we've all had this opportunity already from our own experience to test the philosophy. It could have been Dehi nosmin yata dehe. It could have been any aspect. Sarvasya chaham riddhi sone vishtoma. Whatever it was that gave you that initial realization, that kernel of knowledge, of realization that expanded, that made you realize that this is the absolute truth. Now let me try to fully understand it. So that's coming from, you're now the next generation. So this should be appreciated. It's not just some hyperbole or exaggeration or embellishment. Everyone here has that capacity, and Prabhupada said that. Everyone should become spiritual master. Everyone. When he said everyone, he meant everyone. But again, that is up to us. So we have a very sacred duty. This is whatever weakness is there, ananyaschintayat mam. Krishna will carry what you lack and preserve what you have. If you have faith, not cheap faith, faith born of sincere effort in executing the mission. Kaunteya pratijani name bhakti. Krishna will never let you fail. Never. But first deserve, then desire. And of course, we all hear these things. They're just snippets. But these are the things that will reinforce you in time of need. When you're feeling weak spiritually, for whatever reason, you have to remember Krishna's words. You have to remember Srila Prabhupada's words. And that will bring you out of that Maya. Instantaneously. Not gradually, instantaneously, if you want. Just like when the ghost is attacking, right? We discussed ghost stories the other week. All right? Fear personified is afraid of the holy name. Fear personified, just like we're talking about Lord Shiva here, anger. But fear personified is afraid of the holy name. It's not Lord Shiva's name. Some people are thinking like that he's the supreme. He's not the supreme. But he is the highest Vaishnava from our perspective in that respect. All right, but when someone is attacked by a ghost, he chants Krishna's name, immediately the ghost is gone. Immediately. Doesn't take, 2 seconds. Like the question that was presented to Srila Prabhupada in Australia, how long does it take for one to become Krishna conscious? And Prabhupada, they said that he mentioned one term, I forget if it was a minute. Then he said, no, not a minute, 1 moment. 1 moment. That's all it takes, one moment. But then you have to maintain it. You have to maintain it. You have to keep your balance. Just like on a bicycle. When you're riding a bicycle, you can't be distracted. You can't be looking at your phone while you're riding a bicycle or driving your car. You have to stay on the straight path. You know, sometimes they call it the razor's edge. A little distraction and it's disaster. You know, you run head on into whatever, another vehicle, a tree, a bridge. You know, take your pick. There's anything, so many things in the material world you can crash into. You know, people are walking in the street. I was coming back from the bank, and there was this person, and he's completely isolated. He could have been anywhere, earphones in, walking, looking at this phone, didn't notice anything. Could have walked into an open manhole cover, and he would have just hit the bottom and then wondered what happened. Just completely oblivious. So you can't just be that much covered over and expect to have any positive results. It doesn't work. You can't. You have to be focused. It doesn't matter what it is, riding a bike, driving a car. You have to be focused. You know. And so, in this way, we should take shelter of the parampara. Parampara is not one person. What is that? How do we say that? Must mean companies coming or something. When you drop your phone, all your contacts hit the ground, so they all go up into the ether. So everybody's automatically invited to the temple. So anyway, so that's sometimes people use that term that one can have many gurus because it says that, and that's there. One can have many siksha gurus, instructing gurus, you know. But he has to be careful because they all have to be they have to be saying the same thing. They can't be saying different things. You can't go in front of a judge and present something different than what the law book says. You don't have your own law book. It's not that you went to this school and they taught you law in this way, and another person went to school and they taught you law in this way. Right? And they'll be like, you're a lawyer. There's no two types. You can't say that. No, I went to this is Russian law. And the other person, no, this is American law. You know, the two are incompatible. And maybe some compatibility on certain levels. You know, because they say ultimately everything comes from common law. But at the same time, you can't mix them, you know, indiscriminately. And so there has to be that compatibility. And so therefore this caution, that's that example of that disciple asking Prabhupada to take another spiritual master. Because he's thinking, I'm going to get something else. He's thinking, yes, and I'll be right.
What did Prabhupada say?
You don't know what he said. Dinabandhu, you're to him in that particular audience, it was not the same words, but essentially in private, Prabhupada gave, because it was in private. He didn't say it in the Bhagavatam class. He came to Prabhupada in private. And Prabhupada said, I gave him permission to go to hell. That's what Prabhupada said. I gave him permission to go to hell. Because when one rejects the spiritual master like that, he has no shelter whatsoever, period. End of sentence. There's no shelter. This is the mad elephant offense. Completely destroys the bhakti lata. Completely destroys it. And I can confirm, I was living in Vrindavan for many years after this incident. This person would go to a place called the Vrindavan Research Institute, where many devotees got lost. Because they would go there and they'd read this literature, Goswami literature, or this literature, that literature. And then they would think, I can get the same knowledge. I don't have to be part of ISKCON. I don't have to follow these rules and regulations. Right? Yeah, you'll get material knowledge. You'll become a Sanskrit scholar. You'll become a professor of Indology. Right? But you won't get the Sarvasya Chaham Riddhi Sani Vishtoma Taksmati Ayanam Apavanam Cha. Krishna won't reveal himself to you from within the heart. Knowledge, remembrance, forgetfulness, yes. But knowledge and remembrance, not so much. And there was that verse we were discussing. What was that? Shruti Smriti Puranadi. How does it go? Pancharatrika Vidimbina Aikantiki Hara Bhakti Upatayava Kalpate. It will simply become a disturbance. That's why Prabhupada pushed them out. Because otherwise he'd contaminate others. Become simply a disturbance in society. Right? Can you imagine if someone's pretending to be a priest and he's telling you for some ritualistic purificatory process and he tells you something wrong? You can't have a situation where someone who's pretending to be knowledgeable give you incorrect knowledge and lead you astray. The whole sacrifice becomes useless. It actually has an adverse effect. Right? So we should be very selective who we hear from, what we hear. And there's always the safest is Srila Prabhupada's books. That's the safest. Any other? Mr. Gopal, was that sufficient for the most part? Our family business? It's our family business. Right? Huh?
I like the analogy, our family business.
That's what it is. I'm not going to fight my grandfather or my great-grandfather or insult them and dishonor them, right? We don't want to dishonor the parampara. They're counting on us.
Hamsarupa Prabhu's disciples will get even more mercy.
Yeah, they'll get even more mercy.
It's parampara.
The mango doesn't fall far from the tree, right? That should be. We should all aspire to be sincere followers of our spiritual master. Okay? Do you have a question about the philosophy?
I have a question about negative energy.
Negative energy. Well, it doesn't really relate to the class here, but we can briefly mention and then we can speak after.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
That was a lot.
Here we only have positive energy, we can tell you that. So the more you're here, the more positive energy you'll get. Right, well, you came to the right place. As long as you chant the holy name, you're gonna reawaken your dormant propensity for love of God. Okay, well, good. You have so many good qualifications. Now you can develop the best qualification. Any other questions? I'm just going to keep talking until all the bhakti stacks are done and all the saptas are done. So, are we done? I can't believe it. We're done? Is that all we're going to distribute today? Well, okay. We'll do more. We're going to have so many books selling out on 2 tables. Right, Mother Debrangi and Gopal? We're going to have 2 tables. 1 ladies' table, 1 men's table. Is that what we're doing? Competition. Who can distribute more? Who can distribute more? Okay. We used to have transcendental competition like that. let's bump it up a notch. Okay, all right. Who can distribute more? Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Radha Govindadev ki, Shri Krishna Janmashtami ki, ISKCON New York City ki.
Hamsarupa Prabhu ki.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyeva Taram Parvinebhya Vaishnaveva Namo Namaha. And Dr. Jimmy, since today's a fast day, maybe you could make a plate for our guest because we're not going to be going downstairs to Sashanam.